And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Parent Voices Town Hall that's brought to you by our hosts, Moms Rising, the Partnership for America's Children, United Parent Leaders Action Network, also known as UPLAN, Start Early, the Educational Equity Institute, and other state partners. My name is Nancy Glenn, and I am a campaign director for Moms Rising. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. About a year ago, our host organizations were given an opportunity by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to assist 5 states in building their work on early intervention, special ed, and IDEA policies, with a central focus on parent partnership. Tonight, we have a panel of representatives from the parent partner groups that were formed from the 5 states who joined this project. So we have panelists from Idaho, Kentucky, Maine, New York, and Rhode Island, and we are so excited to hear from each one of them. In addition to our states, in true parent partnership form, UPLAN was active in forming a parent advisory group who played a key role in the application review process to help decide which states would be chosen to receive this support. We are also honored to have a representative from that parent advisory group joining us this evening as well. This town hall is exactly how it sounds: parent voices. Our panelists are experts in their experiences that they will share with you tonight. Each member will share their personal story of what brought them to be the rock star advocates that they are today, and will answer questions that were also chosen by the parent groups. Parent-led questions answered by parents. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our amazing panelists for you this evening. So starting us off, we have Angela from Kentucky. We also have Robin from Idaho, Tiffany from New York, Naomi from Rhode Island, Melissa from Maine, and Samika from Michigan. So we're going to kick it off to have Angela share her personal story as to what brought her here today, and again, what makes her the rock star that she is. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Nancy. Hi, everyone. Like Nancy said, my name is Angela Masden, and I am from Louisville, Kentucky. A little bit about me is that I have been in education for about 10 plus years. I worked with special disability kids, specifically with behavior challenging children here in Kentucky. And even right now, as I am a director of a Boys and Girls Club, I work with several children that have disabilities. And so what Nancy said, what makes me a rock star, I believe, is that I definitely fight for those kids that don't have a voice. I fight for those parents that don't have a voice. I fight for those grandparents that don't have a voice. And I fight for those communities that don't have a voice for children that need just a little extra help. It's very personal to me because my child, of course, is a person that suffers from many challenges and many disabilities. I always say he has a lot of initials behind his name. But that makes him unique, that makes him special, and that makes him just like everyone else. We just need to give him a little extra love. So because of that, I have definitely wanted to make sure that we don't leave those kids behind. And I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to answer questions, and I'm just excited to be in a room full of parents that are just like me.
Thank you so much, Angela. And next, we're going to kick it over to Robin.
Hi there, Robin Zickman out here in Idaho. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm a mama bear that just has had a long journey fighting for kiddos that struggle with dyslexia. I started a nonprofit in the state of Idaho, Decoding Dyslexia Idaho, and set out on a mission to bring awareness to this #1 learning disability, a hidden disability that took me many years of floundering around to try to find my path. And during that time, I made it my mission to make sure no other mom that walks this is going to walk it alone. There are many resources out there through IDEA that are in place to support parents. And I'm now an advocate across the state. We just passed dyslexia legislation this session to require early screening and teacher training. My son is in 7th grade, still reading at 1st grade level. And had we caught him early, when we know that the brain has the capacity to be rewired, he would have had a different path. I'm incredibly passionate to support the families that are out there that don't have the time and don't have the financial resources to meet the needs of these kiddos. So I work hard daily to support those families in finding what I know is available to them through federal law. So I'm excited to be here tonight and appreciate everyone's efforts. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Robin, for joining us. And up next, we have Tiffany.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tiffany Howard from Rochester, New York. I'm a parent of three, 24, 18, and 5. My 5-year-old has autism. He's on the spectrum. He's high functioning. A year ago, he was diagnosed with autism. It was a very shocking to me. It was a little emotional because my older two children didn't have disabilities. So I'm like, what did I do wrong during my pregnancy to make this happen? What did his father do? I'm ready to just yell and scream, but it was nothing we have done. He's a very handsome young man. He's very unique. He loves music. He loves dancing. And I feel as though God doesn't put more on you than you can bear. He gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers, and I'm one of his strong soldiers. I started him with early intervention because he regressed in speaking at the age of 2, and that was one of the best things I could have ever done for him. I'm always advocating for him, my other children, people in the community. I'm a part of a lot of community organizations. Um, I work in a CBO, which they have UPK, EBK. So I see this every day, breathe and live it. So I just look at, if I can take care of other children and support them and advocate for them, why can't I do it for my own? So I'm just grateful to be a part of this Mom Rising, to be able to speak on this panel. And I'm just looking forward to what's out there for me to just keep reaching the stars, because I am a rock star and I'm going to keep rocking, not only for myself, for other people in the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm hoping that everyone will hear about your rock star status and they're going to want to go out and be rock stars as well. Naomi, you're up next, if you could share.
Hello, thank you. My name is Naomi Barret. I play many hats in the community, specifically advocating as a community advocate for trauma-informed support for our children and families and their social, emotional, and mental development of our children. And I'm part of a lot of statewide committees around education and policy, really advocating for my child and all children. But foremost, I am a parent of a 2-year-old boy, Naed Alexander Rosario Barret. As a parent of a child with unique needs, I know firsthand the difficulties our parents are going through as we try to provide the best care and the right support for our children. Since my child has been diagnosed with epilepsy a few months ago, every day I am scared of my child's well-being. I need a place where I know he is safe. Unfortunately, it's really hard to get the right support for our little ones. If it wasn't for the support that I had through early intervention, that was really my support system through this process. I don't know what I would have done, because the first time my child had an episode, a seizure, where it was over 30 minutes, and I had to see my child lose consciousness, do CPR on him, and wait for the ambulance to come while I did all of that. And then finally, when we are at the hospital, I really didn't get the right support. I didn't really get the right follow-up from the hospital. And if it wasn't for early intervention, really supporting me through that process and giving me the right information, I don't know what I would have done, because I had to wait several months while my child was on a waiting list to get evaluations, for him to get any type of medication, any type of support, until my son had several seizure episodes. And it wasn't until he had another grand mal seizure where we had to end up staying admitted in the hospital, where they were able to do all evaluations and finally diagnose him with what we already knew was epilepsy at this point. So it's really sad to see, how the system is really not built for parents. I didn't get the right supports from the hospital. I didn't know what to do. If it wasn't for my early intervention program that provided me with an on-call nurse that I was able to talk to and really supported me through that process, it would have been an even harder process. And if it wasn't that I already had a little bit of that knowledge from the work that I do, it would have been even harder for me. So imagine parents that don't have that support system, that are in Rhode Island, we have a statewide crisis of all these children on wait lists. I was fortunate to get support when I needed it. And even then, it was really hard to have to go through this process. And even though he had a medical condition, to really have to wait. So imagine those parents that are on wait lists for months, 8 months, a year. So this is what really drives my work, and really advocating for policies and legislations that really support our children. And I'm sorry for the background noise. My little one playing in the background.
No worries, Naomi. Honestly, having kids in the background, that is true. That's the true form of what this parent partnership work looks like. We have to make sure that we make all of our meetings accessible. And you know what? Having our kids there only motivates us further to be able to recognize what we need to do for our kiddos. And I also see Tiffany's little guy in the picture too, which is awesome. I'm going to just wave hello really fast because we love kids. Anyway, moving on. Melissa, do you want to share your story?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name's Melissa Harding, and I am from Jackson, Maine. I am a mom of 4 wild and crazy kids, so I'm tired most of the time. I'm also the co-founder of the Maine Parent Advocacy Network, because I'm sure as parents, there's lots of issues and lots of things that we're fighting for all the time. What ended me up kind of in the world of advocacy was my oldest son, who is doing very well now, but he it was a overnight thing. He was a very healthy child, and one morning he woke up and it was like he had developed learning disabilities. He had developed neurological symptoms. So fast forward a while, he was diagnosed with something that's called PANDAS, but the road that led to that diagnosis is what led me to be the advocate that I am today. I had to leave no stone unturned. I saw countless specialists. I couldn't get help from teachers because there wasn't a diagnosis. We all knew something was wrong, but they didn't really know how to help him. So when he officially got the diagnosis, there was a lot of help that came on. Like early intervention was wonderful, and we got him services. But I always wonder what the difference would have been had it been on board sooner, had we helped him sooner, had we given him a 504 or an IEP. But he's doing well now, and I'm able to face another child with a diagnosis of ADHD. So now I know where to go and what to do, and spend a lot of my time helping other parents be able to do the same thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. And now I have the honor to introduce Samika, who is a member of that parent advisory group that UPLAN helped put together. And she has been a part of our group since the get-go. And I'm excited for her to share her story. Go ahead, Samika.
Thank you, Nancy. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Samika Douglas. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I have 2 children, a daughter that's 20 and a son that is 15. So as Nancy stated, I'm with UPLAN, United Parents Action, United Parent Led Action Network. So we are a group of parents who go out and advocate for our babies. And I got into this work with UPLAN because of my son. My son has labels, as she said, has a couple of different acronyms behind his name. And so that's how I got started. He has ADD and ADHD, as well as some cognitive issues, as well as sensory issues. At first, when he was a normal, like everyone say, I don't like to use the word normal, but before his uniqueness came out, he was running around doing everything like everyone else. Nothing to worry about until the age of 6. Age of 6, we finally had him tested. And when we had him tested, I asked for an IEP. They would not give me one at the time, so I fought for one. However, it laid on deaf ears. We wasn't able to get his IEP until actually November of last year, and now he's 15, as I stated, about to be 16. But they gave him a 504, but that because of the delayedness of the reaction of everyone else is why I got into this work, because our children need a voice. Someone needs to be the voice for our babies. So now what we do as a group of parents, we have to change these policies. And as we can see here tonight, it's not just a me thing, it's not just a you thing, it's a we thing. It's all of us across the states. This is all for all our babies. So we advocating for our babies. Where we're going to legislators, we're going up on the Hill, Capitol Hill. We're doing whatever it takes to be that voice because they're not heard. It shouldn't take this long to get some of the services that we all are requesting. And that's what it took for me. I just seen like, no, we can't keep doing this with our kids. And that's how I got into the work.
Thank you so much, Tamika. I'm feeling all kinds of inspired right now. Listening to that, you're right. It is a we thing. And I have shared with our panelists before, and I'll share with our audience tonight that some of the most powerful and strongest advocates that I've ever seen are parents of kiddos that experience disabilities and have gone through the same process that we all have been through. Every single member on this panel has had their own personal experience, but together, we can move forward to be able to create that change for the world that we want to see. So with that being said, we're going to transfer over to some of the questions that were put together by our parent groups. And we're going to start with Robin. How do parents identify opportunities to engage in early intervention and special education policies?
Well, if I wish I would have known then what I know now. My son was given a evaluation at age 4 through Child Find. And it was a team of specialists that I trusted knew better than I that did a 2.5-hour evaluation to tell me that my son was delayed in all areas. I think that it took a lot of me doing a lot of research to really find what it was that he was struggling with. And from the knowledge I gained, I would encourage parents to get involved at state level. I started here in Idaho at district level at my school district. We have a place at the table, whether it's attending school board meetings or just requesting a meeting with your special education director at the district or your superintendent of your district. That's where I started. And then I quickly went down to the State Department of Education and requested a meeting with the state director of special education and sat down with them. And then I joined the Special Education Advisory Panel, which is a federally funded program that's required that each state has. And it's a group that's made up of parents and specialists that come to the table to have discussions just like this. So I encourage parents to recognize there's a lot that you can do, and your voice should be heard. You have to just insert yourself. You need to just open up the door and request a meeting. Our tax dollars pay for those that run our school systems. And so your voice does matter and you do have a place at the table. So I would say, don't be afraid. Walk into the building, request a meeting, pick up the phone, send an email, and just know that you're you can create impact.
Thank you so much, Robin. You're so true on everything you just said. I'm going to ask the same question to Samika. How do parents identify opportunities to engage in early intervention and special education policies?
I would say parents identify those opportunities as soon as they have questions. That's how you identify those opportunities. You ask questions. You see where you could, like Ms. Robbins said, you could see where you can insert yourself. We don't just have a seat at the table. I believe it was someone last night say we also let's decide the menu. Let us decide the menu as well. Let us have a seat at the table when the policies are written, when the procedures are written. Let us have a voice at those tables, and we need to insert ourselves there. But as soon as you have a question about anything, that's their opportunity at that time to start becoming an advocate for yourself, for your community. Ask questions, why or why not. And all stories matter. So tell them your story, why this affects you. Why do it matter to you?
Thank you.
I would just add too that you're not alone. I felt very alone. And once you insert yourself, you will find that there are parents that will be relieved. Like, oh, thank you. I have the same concerns. I didn't know I could join these meetings. I didn't know that I had that option. So just know that you're not alone. It might feel scary to take that first step, but as soon as you do, it's quick when a group of parents will share similar stories. And then it's not just you, it's 10 of you, and then it's 20 of you. And when I started this, it was just me. And now I have thousands of parents across the state.
And you have that support. You have that support as well. As she said, you don't feel alone. So you have that support even for everyday life. So even with my group of parents, even if I'm having an issue, the car may have issues. That's a parent that I could rely on and talk to as well. That's going to understand exactly what I'm going through. And so that's that me building my village as well.
Community is everything. That is for sure. I'm going to move on to our next question. Thank you so much, Samika and Robin. That's some really helpful advice for a lot of the parents that might be listening in today. Our next question is going to go to Melissa. And the question is, what does healthy parent partnership look like in policy advocacy?
Thanks, Nancy. So to me, a healthy partnership looks like a lot like what we're doing here tonight. It looks like caring. It looks like listening. It looks like gathering as many parents as you can and coming together and have conversations about the experiences that we're having, like what's working, what's not working. I think that it looks like not making policies that affect parents without having parent input. We're parents and these are our children, so we know them better than anybody. So having our voices like respected and valued the way that they should be, I think is really important when it comes to policy making. So I think that we should be at any table where decisions are being made.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm going to turn it over to Angela, and I'm going to ask you the same question of what does healthy parent partnership look like in policy advocacy?
I definitely agree with Melissa. It's things like this that I think just get out knowledge. It gets out to people that are maybe not as, maybe don't feel like they have a voice like maybe we do, because I can say at first I didn't have a voice because I just didn't want to accept my son having so many challenges. And I think that's a lot of with parents is that sometimes we are like, oh, it's going to be okay. Especially with me working with kids with special needs, things like that. I just know how difficult it is to get through the process and get help and support. So I was a mom saying, oh my God, I don't want to do that. No, almost in denial. But just thinking about being with those other parents is like, I encouraged them. I was their safety net. I didn't lead them into anything they didn't want to know. I think that we have a hard time understanding all the initials and what those names are and what does it do. And going to a doctor and being like, okay, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. So sometimes people just don't have a voice. And I think because we are on this live together and we are representing so many states, that it is very encouraging even to me to be like, oh, wow, I can reach out to Melissa. I can reach out to Tiffany now, can reach out to Robin now and be like, help. What does your state do that my state doesn't do? I think even to take it one step further, I think that schools definitely need to have a parent support system for kids that have disabilities of any nature, ADHD, ADD, MDD, whatever DD that comes with it, okay? Because he has everything, right? And I think like for my school, my son's school, we don't have that. There's no one else I can talk to. There's no one else that I can that can relate to me. And I think it takes maybe me to just be like, okay, what does this look like in this school? But I do think as a whole, schools should start having some parent support, because it's very important to have the parent support. It's very important to have people to go and speak policy with you to make the changes, because not everybody gets to sit at the table. And when you do get invited to the table, you want to make sure you know what you're talking about, because they will brush you off and you don't ever get to be at the table anymore. So just being able to, I always tell my kids, knowledge is power. Researching, understanding things. Even my son at being 8, I try to teach him, just because you have these things that are challenging or a unique situation, I want you to be knowledgeable about what you have, so that you can speak on that, so that you can help your friend that's in the same class, and y'all can be together and be like that support, be that voice for you all. Because sometimes kids that are in those situations, I have seen, they are put in the corner of a school and never looked at, not seen, not heard, because of the image of the school. And that's not fair. It's not fair for them. My son is very athletic. He's very smart in some ways. And it's not fair that he's in a little classroom with 5 other kids and can't associate with any other kid because they're nervous about what might happen. So I definitely think things like this, like Melissa said, is like absolutely wonderful. And we just have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then maybe next time on this live, it'll be like 50 of us from all different states. And that's how powerful it will be.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. I'm going to just ask a follow-up question to that of what barriers do you think would need to be broken in order for parents to be able to be involved? And what kind of supports do you think should be in place to make sure that parents have the opportunity to be involved?
I definitely think the barriers would be, first of all, schools have to stop thinking that parents are so aggressive when they're talking about their kids and supporting their kids. We're not aggressive. We're just trying to make sure our kids are in the best situation. I also think it is very difficult to sit in a room full of 3, 4, 5 people telling you something's wrong with your child, and you don't have anybody sitting beside you. I think that is a barrier. I think that getting me help in the school, like having an advocate for me, should be something that should be presented when I'm sitting in an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting. If I've never know what that 504 means or what an IEP means, the people across the desk for me are telling me all kinds of words that I have no idea. And that's a barrier. And I don't think people understand that. Not everybody has a college degree or understand this, and that's a barrier. I also think a barrier is just having people from low income families. That can be a barrier as well. Not meeting their needs or meeting where they are is a barrier. So that's just some of my things.
I think meeting times are something that is truly important when you want parent representation on something, and you do it like right at bedtime, or you do it like on short notice during a work day. And it's like, did you really want parent representation, or did you just want to say that you put the offer out there? So I think having childcare options available for parents who are trying to engage within systems or, you know, work on policies and things like that, and to take into consideration the time of day that we're trying to ask for parent support would make a huge difference.
I wanted to add, kind of piggyback off of Angela as well as Melissa, when she was saying meeting individuals where they are. We ask, as she stated, we ask these parents to come to these meetings, and we don't think about all the other things that they have to go through, from picking the children up to making dinner. And yes, some meetings that I attend, they do accommodate with dinner, they accommodate with childcare. But it's not just that as well. It's that we now have to go to these legislators and these senators and these individuals who's making these policies. That's the start of it in the first place for us even attending these meetings. But we need to get there and as well, and start letting them know that we as parents need to be making these decisions. As I stated the other night, nothing about us without us. Why are you making these decisions based off of what your life? You don't have to go through this. You don't have this barrier. You don't have a sick child right here. You don't have the other children running around. You don't have any of those things. You're not even coming to see how we're doing down here once we vote for you. So you don't know exactly what's going on. So a lot of things is the meeting times, the child cares, the transportation. There's a lot of different barriers that stand in the way, but we also need to start changing some of the policies where these parents are sitting on some of these boards and commissions, making these rules and procedures and policies that's set in place.
Thank you guys so much. Tiffany, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I totally agree with that because after a long day's work for some families, some people be exhausted. People are in college, and even though sometimes they may provide childcare, you don't know that family situation, what they're going through with that child. Are they able to bring that child out to that meeting? How is that child going to react with a stranger, looking over them while their parent is in a meeting? Thank God for Zooms, so that way they are feeling comfortable in their own environment. They don't have to worry about, okay, if the kids in the background making noise or whatever, they're in their own personal space. Because just like Mika said, transportation is a big barrier. Everybody doesn't drive, and the way the world is set up now, you barely want to go outside because you're, worried about looking over your shoulder, making sure you're safe and your family and your children as well. So that's a big barrier for a lot of, the things. And like you said, the policies, parents should be able to sit on these boards and make some of these changes. Y'all, they do all this talking and this and that and the third, but at the end of the day, we are the parents. We know our children best. We live with them, we sleep with them, we eat with them. So you can't say we don't know what we're talking about because we carried them for 9 months. So obviously we do know what we're talking about. And you just have to give us a chance and let us utilize our voice. And those that don't know how to utilize their voice, we're going to help y'all use your voice.
Yes, Mama. I love it. Absolutely. You're right on the money with that one. Parents are the experts in these experiences, and we need to make sure that parents are always at the forefront of all of these decisions that are being made. Absolutely. We're going to go on to our next question. And this one goes to Robin. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, and special education are incredibly complex topics. Now, how has working with your organizational partners helped navigate that learning curve?
I'm not sure that I found a lot of benefit in working with anyone other than my own research and finding other moms. So I think for me, it came down to connecting with other parents that had fought the journey before me. Even if it wasn't specific to my child's area of deficit or concern, IDEA law is IDEA law, regardless of the area that a child struggles. It's essentially the same law that protects your child and you as a parent. So I think just finding that network of moms and really trying to take the time to do the research. If you yourself don't have time to do research, which believe me, I get, it took me hours and years before I figured out a lot. And so I would encourage parents today, if you're just starting your journey, you're not in this alone. We are all out there. I don't know how to network all of us together, and maybe Nancy, you have some ideas, but if I were a new mom to the journey of all of this, I would have loved to have had access to all of you, anyone who has the knowledge. So if there's a way that we can help be a resource for other parents just starting the journey, that's what it's all about, so that we can help parents not waste precious time in stumbling through the system, because it is incredibly complex. It is. But once you have a parent and a partner to help you through it, you really are empowered, and you realize there are a lot of laws in place, and you can then take that knowledge and fight for your kiddo.
Thank you, Robin. I'm going to shift it over to Angela and ask you the same question. So, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, and special education are incredibly complex topics. Now, how has working with your organizational partners helped to navigate that learning curve?
Well, just like Robin, I was my partner. So at that time, I didn't have anybody. But I was very knowledgeable because I worked in the special education realm. So like if I didn't have that, I would have been lost. And so I think Robin said something like, we need to have parents be able to get resources earlier. And that is something that me being on these parent calls that I've every month have really been trying to think about is like, as soon as a baby is born, I think a mom should have resources about disabilities, about speech, about sensory. What can you do to help this? What happens if you don't, if your son or daughter is not doing this at this age? Who can you call? There's none of that at all. And that is like the missing partnership piece. I think if like the hospitals, the parent advocacy groups, anything, if we could like partner together to really try to make sure that we have the resources right then and there. I mean, like in the first 6 months of a child being born, I think that a lot of kids won't be missed. I mean, my son failed the speech or failed the hearing test. And so if I knew him failing the hearing test as soon as he was born was going to get to him having speech struggles, not being able to talk until he was 3, 4, then the help that I could get, it was already surpassed because what we have is first steps here. You have to be 3 or younger. Well, I didn't know he could talk to about 2.5. So then it's over. So now I'm like, what happens at 3? And there's nothing after 3 unless you get into the school and then you can have speech. There's like nothing. So now he's 8 and I'm still trying to catch him up to being 8 and going to some of these other kind of, I don't know, I guess organizations or businesses that could help you. I cannot afford that. And there's a lot of us that cannot afford those things or those special classes that can help you and try to get your kid into these classes. And I can't afford that to be able to help. So now I'm stuck on my own. So I really think in my state, especially, we don't have those partnerships. And I definitely, I'm telling you, I'm working so hard to get those things in hospitals and to get those things in the hands of people early because we need them. We need them bad. And we need them bad.
I fully agree, Angela. Fully agree. I just really feel passionate about early interventions. And as a mom, you cannot be expected to know all the milestones that are required or expected of your kiddo. So I think there's a real disconnect in the medical world and the educational world, right? And so my kiddo didn't meet the milestones at his 3-year annual evaluation. And, your pediatrician should have, and prior to that, like to Angela's point, prior to that, when they're very early on, Angela mentioned that her son didn't pass the hearing test. Why? Why was there not anything in the hospital to have guided her? Okay, here's an infant that didn't pass the hearing test. Mom, here's some areas that you should follow up with. Where was the pediatrician in that? Why weren't they rolling out? And the same for my son, there's a real disconnect, and I'm extremely passionate about early intervention. So we are missing it. We're missing it between the medical world,
Yes.
getting that information to the parents, and then the parents having access to those resources, and there being federal dollars to help the parents that need that. Because in the end, I firmly believe that we are paying in the end for these kiddos when we failed them. So why not spend the money in the beginning to catch them early, provide what they need, and give them a real chance at being successful in life? And we're not doing that because we're not empowering parents with knowledge.
Right. And there's like it's like, oh, you missed the hearing test at, when you was young, then he took it again. Oh, he magically passed it, which, okay, no, I don't really know, but I'm like drugged up after having a baby. So I'm like, okay, yay, he passed it, right? I don't know. And then you get to this age, and then you start being like, I know something might be wrong, but then it's the schools that call and call and call, come pick him up, come do this, what's wrong? And I feel like Tiffany, I think, mentioned before in her introduction, is like thinking something was wrong. Like, what did I do as a mom that I failed him already before he's even 5 years old, right? And that is it's mom guilt, and it's horrible to feel like that. But I do feel like what Robin said, if my pediatrician would have came in after he failed that first test and say, hey, Angela, hey, Miss Masden, it looks like Xavier failed, and we're just gonna look into it a little bit more. He'll pass it. We'll bring him back and pass it. But in the meantime, this is what you can do to try to keep an eye on that. That never happened. There's a disconnect from the medical world to this, and then to education. It's all
Right. And then you as a parent, by the time you feel like you're following your gut and you realize that you missed something, then there's these years that are wasted of you trying to navigate the system and find out the resources. And, there's a lot of mom guilt, as you said, but also in the education world, there's a lot of a lack of knowledge in our teachers and no fault to the teachers. I firmly blame the teacher prep programs at our university levels. We don't train our teachers to have the knowledge, but then it becomes the teacher saying to you, did you not read with your son? Do you read to him? As if you did something wrong. And we have an opportunity to support parents because there are so many resources out there. I don't know why they're so difficult to find. And I would support this group and anyone else to help get them out to parents.
I truly agree the thing when you're talking about the pediatrician, because when I found out that my son was on the spectrum and I shared it with her, she goes, oh, I kind of thought he was. Well, if you thought he was at the age of 1, why you didn't tell me? Why I had to hear it from one of his speech therapists to say, well, won't you look into this to see if he's on the spectrum a lot? And then you saying, had you told me that when he started regressing speaking, and I went on my own and found information on how to do the early intervention because I work with children over 20 plus years and I see this every day, I navigated and did everything on my own without any help. But had she nipped that in the bud in the beginning, we would have got what we needed for him at that time. But it's okay because mom here and we rocking it out, and he got everything he need and more.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm definitely glad that he got everything that he needed for sure, Tiffany. Naomi, did you want to hop in?
Yeah. And just like there's a huge difference between institutions and community organizations, right? It's a systemic issue. And what I've seen, it's a systemic issue because in Rhode Island, community organizations have peers. We have community health workers have been a huge piece in Rhode Island, really building community organizations that have community health workers, that have peers, parent peers, because they have lived experience. So what I hear a lot is that, no, I wasn't able to get that support from my organization because until I met with a parent that went through the same experience as me. So I know that in Rhode Island, we've been so intentional in really making sure that we have peers involved in this work, that we have community health workers. And usually those community health workers have to have lived experience in order to support families in navigating that system. So we're seeing it in the hospitals. I didn't have the greatest experience in the hospital, but I know that we're building it into those institutions, community health workers that know how to navigate that system. It's not perfect, right? But I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that they're trying because there is that systemic issue that we don't have that. And that's why when a doctor is supporting families, they're really just throwing out so many jargons that families don't understand. But I see that they are trying to be intentional to really making sure that we're building those peers into the system in order to really support families. I know that that's the support that I've seen when it comes to really navigating IDEA and navigating that learning curve, really being able to work with organizations like the one that I'm representing, Parents Leading Educational Equity. I have had that support through my organization and through other organizations that have peers, that have parent partners, that have peers supporting and navigating other families in that system. So I think that's super important to really be intentional on that. We have the individuals that are actually doing the work have that lived experience in order to support other families.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes right back to one of the things Samika had raised up earlier of nothing about us without us. And if you really want to move this forward, that us word, that we word is one of the biggest pieces there. And if you want to see parents be able to actively get involved, they honestly learn more from each other. So I feel like from this conversation thus far, we have definitely identified that, barriers need to be broken. And, for organizations and for, some of these different institutions to be able to be truly recognizing what parents are, which are experts, and bringing it together. Because imagine how much stronger our kiddos would be if we did have that support system amongst the organizations and the institutions and the parents. We would be a powerhouse that no one could stop. I'm going to move on to our next question.
Can I say something real quick, Nancy, before you move on?
Go ahead.
You were saying that us parents and the organizations come together. One way that parents and we could get more involved as well is write to our Senate and legislators to pass these bills so we could get funding for some of these things that we are in need of. We are in need of them because there's lack of funding. Right now, as I just stated earlier, we had went to DC just this past week, and that was one of the things we were fighting for was the ECE, early child care and education. That's to help get funding to help support some of these things that we need. So you can start writing to your state representatives, your legislators, and that's another way for you all to assist us to get this help that these babies need.
Thank you so much, Samika. I always love a good action. So our next question is going to go to Naomi. What steps do you think elected officials should take to ensure that parents and caregivers have a seat at the table where policies and legislation are being created?
I think we shared a lot in regards to that earlier, right? The first thing is really looking at those barriers. Really looking at those barriers in order to really make sure that families are at the table, right? The federal government has important roles. The federal government has important roles to play when it comes to crafting national education policies and other important policies that affect our children. But we only do ourselves a disservice if we fail to draw on the input, advice, expertise of families who implement, of the people who implement and see the effects of those policies every day. So that's why it's so important to really it's important for our families it's important for our families to be and caregivers to be a part of these decision making and policy decisions. Sorry, guys. Here you go. There you go. And starting with creating legislations that would allow a committee of parents and caregivers to make policy decisions, really starting there and making sure that we're being super intentional by doing this. So really advocating for legislators to really put parents at the table by creating a legislation and a policy around this and really advocating for this, looking at the barriers that families are going through. We talked about not having childcare, right? I know that I've been to every week I'm at the State House here in Rhode Island, really giving testimonies in person, which is so important, right? Giving testimonies in person, being part of the speaker program for certain bills and policies. But it's really hard when you have a little one and really looking for childcare. And sometimes having to bring your child to the State House, and some bills they don't get out until 10 o'clock at night, and you're there until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And we have to pick up our kids, etc., from school, really taking into account these barriers. I know that at one point with my organization, Parents Leading Educational Equity, the executive director was very advocating for us to have a virtual advocacy day in order for us to really share testimony virtually. Being able to have these options for families are so important, because we would have more families, more parents at the table. So it's important in order for us to be really, for elected officials, senators, to be intentional, because like we continue to say, nothing about us without us. We are parents, caregivers are the ones that have expertise. How can we create policies and legislations for children without the experts, right? Parents and our caregivers. How can you start creating policies that are equitable? That in order to support families, all families, we really need parents and caregivers at the table. So it's important for legislators to have families involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Naomi. And, power to your mama for going through and making sure that you're getting your voice heard. We love it. Melissa, same question. What steps do you think elected officials should take to ensure that parents and caregivers have a seat at the table where policies and legislation are being created?
I think that's easy. Just give us the seat. I think, you reached out to everybody who's on this call tonight, and you found yourself some champions in communities, and you got them together and you put them on this call to talk to them and ask them questions. So I think legislators and people who have run for office do a really good job when they're running by listening and knocking on doors and finding out, what everybody's issues are that they want to see fixed. And I think then they get into office and it's kind of silence, and then they're just there, and then you talk about it again when it's time for an election. But I think if you really want to make a difference in your communities and you really want to do something awesome for kids, then listen to their parents. Hold a town hall. Invite parents to share their stories with other legislators. When you guys are all talking about a bill and deciding which way you're going to vote, invite some parents. And so that, to me, I just think is probably one of the easiest things that we could do. If you want to know what we want, then ask us.
You're absolutely right. Legislators and elected officials, if I can do it, then you can do it. You can bring these powerhouses together. You can listen to parents. You can make sure that happens. And we're going to go to our final question, which is, what is one piece of advice you would give a parent that feels like they do not have a voice in this system? And we're going to start with Robin.
Hi. What I wish I would have done different is follow my gut. Don't question your gut. You know your child best. The minute that you have concern is the minute that you take action, and find your people, find your village, follow through it. I mean, I don't know how many no's I was told. I don't know how many times I was told, give it time, and all these different rabbit holes that I was sent down. And every single one of them, I knew in my gut that it didn't make sense. So listen to that, find your village, and feel empowered.
Thank you, Robin. Tiffany, same question. What is your piece of advice that you'd give parents that feel like they don't have a voice?
Don't be discouraged. Stay encouraged, and know that you have to advocate all the time, not only for yourself, for your child, to make a difference in this world for our babies.
Thank you, Tiffany. Great advice. Melissa, what is your piece of advice?
Organize. Find other parents with similar experiences and get together and be as loud as you can for as long as you need until somebody listens.
And Samika.
I will say, don't accept no. Ask them why not. As all the other ladies said, just find that village and amplify your voices. The more, the merrier. The beautiful you sound.
You need a few folks to harmonize, right?
Most definitely.
Angela, what's your piece of advice?
I would say find your voice, use the voice, educate yourself, educate other people, and know that you're not a failure as a mom, as a dad, as a grandparent, as whatever parent guardian you are. Just know that we don't have all the answers for everything, and that your child is beautiful and unique no matter what anyone says, and use that as your power to uplift anyone and everybody.
And Naomi, what is your piece of advice?
Give yourself some grace. Don't forget to give yourself some grace. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves. But it's so important to know that you're doing such an amazing job, right? To really uplift your family, to advocate, constantly advocating for your child, right? In the most minimal thing, right? From the moment they wake up to the moment that they sleep, right? You are constantly really supporting and advocating for them every step of the way until they're grown. So really give yourself some grace because you're doing the best that you can. And also, your story is so powerful. Don't ever stop sharing your story. Sometimes we feel like, some parents feel sometimes like they can't articulate what they want to say, but I think it's just as easy as sharing your story. That's so powerful. Your story is so powerful. So start just sharing your story. If you don't know where to start, just start sharing your story with whoever wants to listen.
Thank you, Naomi. I feel like a little bit of what we found is that we've all kind of been conditioned to hold our stories in, to hold our experiences in. But truth be told, it's not an experience that a lot of us are only feeling. It's one that a lot of us are going through. And the more power we have together, the more likely we are to make change. So I did hear that we did have a few questions that had come up in the comment threads in some of our live. So we are going to ask a question. The first one is, how can grandparents support and help their family, especially when they live out of state? Do any of our panelists want to tackle that question?
I guess I could go. I would just say support them where you are. Ask them what they need and support as much as you can, even if you are out of state. I think sometimes even researching or educating yourself about the state that they live in when it comes to special education or ECE or disabilities, and giving them that knowledge is always helpful because like I think one of our moms said, we just don't always have the time to look and research. So if we got other people to help us, even if you're out of state, that's support. If you just calling me and saying you're doing a great job, I love you, that's support. Just don't think of it being so big. The little things is always good. Sometimes I just want somebody to call me and be like, okay, he had a meltdown today, but you're okay. You are okay, right? And so I think that's also support.
Melissa, are you sharing?
I guess I wasn't off mute. I didn't even see the button. When you're going through the process of like getting a diagnosis, or when you're trying to get services for a child, it's so isolating. Like a lot of times you just feel like so drained. So I think just being a soft place to fall, especially if you're a grandparent that's out of state, and listening could probably be one of the most important and like rewarding things you could do for a parent who's going through something like this.
Also, I just want to raise up that grandparents are caregivers too. We're all supplying that care. So getting involved with some of these local organizations and some of the hosts that are putting on this town hall tonight, that is another way that you can get involved. Our next question comes from Judith Bradley, and she asks, what do you feel the role of allies could or should be?
I could chime in. I feel like the role could be more collaborative. I feel like for whatever reason, and I'm still confused by it after 10 years of doing this, there is this constant pushback against parents. And I don't understand why we aren't just all at the table collaboratively. So I would appreciate if those that are in the decision-making roles of a state, whether it be legislators and senators and those, or at a district, school district, or in the medical world, like we spoke about earlier, when earlier intervention is so important. I think it's important that all three of those pieces have some more collaboration so that they have a better understanding of how they could work together to provide a more successful materials for parents. We have all these different entities working in their own tunnel, and I think we need to all come to the table more often. It would be one thing. And then I think that those in the decision making at state level or district level need to do a better job of working with the parents. We really are the experts in our children, and oftentimes the experts of their disability. No one knows better what it's like to live with a child with whatever disability it is than the parents.
And I just wanted to add to that intercollaboration, right, between organizations is so important. That communication from one provider to another. What I've seen is we make it, well, organizations, providers, doctors, hospitals, clinics make it so hard for parents to get the right supports from one place to another. They're usually doing referrals out, and it makes it so difficult. Parents are dealing with so many different providers. So if we could really collaborate together, if our allies could collaborate together to be able to communicate with the other organization, make that referral for parents, not give parents and caregivers, here's the number, you could call here. Really supporting families, and that engagement piece is so important, being able to engage with families, provide the right information, but also, yes, handhold them. It's important to sometimes you have to handhold families in that process. Not all, when we're talking about being culturally sensitive and culturally responsive to our families, we really have to understand that not all of our families know how to navigate this system. The majority don't, right? There's language barriers, there are cultural barriers. There's so many barriers that really don't support families in accessing those supports. So really making it easier, really engaging positively with our families, really collaborating, in that intercollaboration between one organization to another in order to make those referrals seamlessly, right? That warm transfer really supports our families and takes off that burden, that load off of them. I know that I know how to navigate that system, and it's still really heavy. Sometimes I shut down when I have to do multiple things and work with multiple providers. So imagine those families that don't know how to navigate that system. They shut down completely. So I think that's super important.
Absolutely. You have to always be aware that the families and the parents are also dealing with the emotional, personal connection to what they're working with as well. Our next question comes from Brittany Bowman Jensick. Hello from Parents Helping Parents Coalition of Monroe County and Rochester, New York. I'm interested to know if different advocates around the country know and or could share what their capacity lists look like. I know that there is some data out there. Unfortunately, we do not have that available for you tonight on this call. However, we can tell you ways to be able to help, in Monroe County and also in New York as a whole, on ways that you might be able to help with those waiting lists and services. I know that it's kind of been touched on a little bit with our panel, but I don't know if you guys wanted to chime in on some of the great advice you have given. All right, I'll hop in, guys. So Samika, you touched on it earlier. Funding. We need funding. All right. If we don't have the funds available, then we can't really help to assist any of these groups on these wait lists. You want to chime in?
Yes, I kind of missed some of what you were saying. It had bleeped out, and so I'm like, that's why I had to
I
stop.
think all of us were
thought
kind
you
of like,
froze.
No worries. The question was in regards to wait lists. So they're asking to share data, capacity data, but we don't have that on us tonight. You know, I firmly believe that we have policy wonks that do a lot of that wonking for us, and we are parents that are bringing our expertise as well. I know that there is data out there, so definitely connect, and we can definitely find some of that out. But we can help give some advice to families on ways they might be able to advocate for some of those wait lists. And so, Samika, go ahead.
Some ways to advocate for those wait lists. As I was saying earlier about legislators, we have to get them to start changing these policies. These policies that we are advocating for daily, on a lower level, on a state level, sometimes on just our county level. Sometimes those policies cannot be changed until we go up higher to Capitol Hill. So we have to, even if we could sit at home and advocate to Capitol Hill, sending emails, calling your representatives, getting others to sign petitions. They have change.org. You can put a petition on. That way you can help across state. As you said, we all need to come together. So I need to be signing whatever petition Angela has here in Michigan. I need to be signing in that, supporting her as well. Same with Robin and so forth and so on. We need to be supporting one another by across state as well. And also even locally, go to your local commission meetings. Start sitting at those local commission meetings, seeing what's going on in your community, your local community, seeing what's going on. You have a voice, and your voice can be heard. You just have to get out there and start amplifying yourself. No one discovers leaders. You are already a born leader. So once you get out there and start advocating for yourself, it's going to come naturally. It's just like riding a bike. It's in you. You just have to bring it out.
I also think breaking that disconnections throughout everything, local, state, just breaking all of those disconnections. I think me and Robin talked about, like, from medical field to this to the education. So breaking those disconnects, but also training more people about early intervention. Even though we could get like lots of money, maybe using some of that money to put us mamas through training, to train the trainer kind of thing, to train like early intervention classes, and maybe train teachers about early intervention classes, train doctors about early intervention. I just think that those things could happen, like breaking that disconnect, but also training people on what early intervention looks like. And I think Tiffany said that she did it herself, and her pediatrician didn't even know what to do. So she needs to train us, right? So if she can train us, then we will know what to look for early on. Or maybe these providers that we trust our kids with, they will know what to look for. Maybe they just don't know. And maybe that is something that we need to kind of take a step back and maybe ask those questions. Do you just know? Or maybe they don't want to misdiagnose and think that it's their fault, and maybe get them out of that mindset and try to think about how to just work together, break the disconnection, and then maybe doing this training piece, and even training people how to talk to the legislator and the state people and representative. What does that look like for people as well?
I was going to just chime in on the training piece really quick. I think that's one of the biggest missing pieces, is that we have not provided. We don't always need a diagnosis early on. I feel like you can oftentimes maybe even just have a screener where we're looking for characteristics of, whether it's autism or characteristics of, in my world, of dyslexia, or characteristics of, I'm not sure. I can't speak to all the areas of disabilities, but I feel like sometimes we get very much hung up on this diagnosis, which might be important at some point in the game. But when we're talking about early intervention and we're talking about training and bringing awareness to parents and doctors and teachers, maybe it's as simple as just having some training around giving access to parents about the characteristics. Had I had and known and been aware of the characteristics of dyslexia, for example, I could have marked every box at the age of 3 or 4. However, my son didn't get diagnosed until he was 9 and in 3rd grade, and it was too late. So sometimes I feel like we need to move away from this constant search of a diagnosis. There's always a waiting list involved. There's always a lot of money involved. And maybe we should just, as parents, be empowered with support. When we see that, when we have that gut feeling and we see at home that something isn't right, where could we go to start to look so that we ourselves at home can catch some of those characteristics and get started on the right path early on?
Also, like for me, it's super important to really look at things with a human right perspective. So really looking at, I always say these things that we're advocating for, it shouldn't be a question that we should be asking or requesting. It's a civil right. It's a human right, right? So even looking into policies and regulations and really looking at that path and being creative and looking at that path of how can we really advocate for this at that level as well, because this is something that our children should be, it's critical for our child's development, their social emotional development, and it's a civil right, it's a human right that our children should have these supports, especially being really advocating for early childhood interventions. It's so important. Those 3 years, we talk about how those 3 years are critical, right? In order, and we hear a lot of the stories here today, how that those first screenings, right? They weren't able to provide the right supports in the beginning, right? And really dig deep into that piece, right? That early intervention piece, and really making sure systemically that we're supporting families and children early on, and we're providing this because that we have that these systems have to provide this, not because we're requesting it, but they should be providing it. Looking at that civil rights perspective as well. Sorry.
Thank you, Naomi. So our final question from the comments section was from Judith. I am meeting with Congressman John Yarmouth tomorrow morning in his office in Louisville. What do you want me to ask him for? He's the chair of the House Budget Committee.
Well, all right, Judith. Yay. So I live in Louisville, you all. And so I actually would love for you all to kind of tell Judith kind of what you all are doing that has worked or not worked so it could come over here to Louisville, Kentucky. One, it would, of course, be Judith, funding. John, I need some funding. We need some money. We need some early interventions. We need some people popping into hospitals. We need breaking the silence, breaking the disconnection. How does that happen? Those are my things, but it would be great to hear from other moms from other states.
I just got done passing legislation in the state here, and it was a beast of a task. And I am not political. And I was sad to learn how political this all really is, because it really does boil down to the support from our state leadership and even our federal leadership. But I guess I would encourage tomorrow when you meet with him, he's the House Budget Committee, you said, chair of the House Budget Committee. Oh gosh, there's so many things. I don't know what I might ask for first, but I would like for him to be aware that the money, spending the money up front to support the needs of these students is actually going to save money in the long run for our states. I'm a firm believer of that. What ends up happening is we don't do what we need to do in the beginning to support these kids because there's nothing there. There's nothing in place. And then we flounder around as parents, and then boom, here we are later on, and we finally get a diagnosis or a screener, and it's almost too late. Now this child has a lot of things going on now that they may not have had going on had we spent the money up front to catch them early. So I always feel like when it comes to funding and bringing policies and things in place at state level, that I really want to I'm not sure how to get that message across to those that make those big decisions, how important it is to spend the money up front, because we are doing a disservice to society as a whole by not doing that. And we're in the end spending a lot more money.
And I feel like with that being said, I am going to wrap us up for this evening, and I'm going to share another thing, Judith, that you might be able to share in your meeting tomorrow, which is, tell him to keep an eye on that president budget. He's requesting for the fiscal year 2023 a significant increase, for IDEA grants that are going to be going directly to the states. It's the largest 2-year increase ever for the program. It's a $3.3 billion increase. That increase will support the IDEA Part B section, which is the preschool grants programs, by nearly $100 million. It doubles the funding for IDEA Part C, grants for infants and toddlers, to $932 million. It provides additional funding to support IDEA Part D, including workforce supports and parent training. And it proposes reforms to increase equitable access to early intervention services by supporting states to address barriers to identify all eligible children and connect them to services as early as possible. These are going to be discussions that are going to start, roughly in October 1st, 2022. So I would say definitely have that be on the horizon. And for the folks that are joining us tonight, if you are interested in getting involved in some of the work that these parents have been talking about tonight, then I would highly recommend that you sign up for the advocacy and policy list with Start Early for their federal agenda updates. Start Early has been very instrumental in making sure that parent voices are being heard and to make sure that this issue is being risen up in DC so we can truly see changes that are happening across the country. That being said, I want to say thank you very much to our parent panelists tonight. Naomi, Samika, Melissa, Angela, as well as Robin. Samika, Melissa, Naomi, Tiffany, Robin, Angela, you guys have all been great. I truly appreciate everything that you guys have done tonight. And I know that, your voices were definitely heard. And I also want to send a big thank you to Moms Rising, the Partnership for America's Children, UPLAN, Start Early, the Educational Equity Institute, as well as our other state partners that were able to help us put this Parent Voices Town Hall on tonight. I feel as though we got a couple of messages across, which was, we need to break some of those barriers, meet parents where they are at, and so they can make sure they have a seat at the table, extend that invite every single time, see them as the experts that they are, and remember that nothing should be done about us without us. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And my name's Nancy Glenn, and thank you so much. Have a good night.